There, it's Tessa with Hip Over 50. So, today I'm going to do the flip side of a video I did the other day. Today I'm going to talk about the things that the UK can learn from the US. And if you haven't already watched my channel, I'm Tessa with Hip Over 50, talking kind of about what it's been like for me to move back to England in midlife and what it's like from an American point of view. But I won't be just talking about that. I want to explore a lot of different ideas on this channel, but today I am going to compare or talk about some of the things that I think the UK can learn from the US because I look at both sides. I'm pretty objective. I think it's better living here in England, but I can say, yeah, there's some things that they do better in the US. So come on, let's find out what they are. So number one on my list, you probably realize this if you've watched any of my other videos, is I think the real estate market here needs a big correction. I think the government should step in and make some big changes, pass some laws, because it's broken here. The selling process, the buying process is very much of a Wild West situation. And I would love to see estate agents or estate agencies licensed so that people can respect them and so that they can make a better income and so that, buying and selling a home isn't such a scary ride. It's kind of like a Disneyland ride, because you never know what's going to happen at the end. It can fall apart. It can go along for months and months and months and then fall apart at the very end. Whereas in the US, we have a lot of rules in place. We have regulation. We have licensed estate agents. And typically a home is bought and sold within about 30 days. It's pretty rare. It can be even less. It might be a little bit more, but because it's all done electronically, this process tends to be pretty smooth. And you also get to you get to a certain point where there's a lot of penalties if you do back out of a contract. So it does not happen that often. So there you go. Number one on the list, how to buy or sell a home to protect both the buyer and seller is something the UK could definitely learn from the US. And I know the laws are slightly different in each country. I'm primarily speaking about England because that is the country I'm in. But overall, I still think the US does a better job at that particular process. Number two is let's have a better sense of national pride. I mean, it is called the United Kingdom. Oddly enough, it's also called the United States of America. But from my perspective, from what I've heard and observed since I've moved back here, people don't feel very united. They identify with their own country and they kind of grumble at the other countries, or at least maybe they're all just grumbling at England. I don't know. I've not lived in other countries, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, Northern Ireland, but it seems that people are a little bit, they're not united. They are sort of each looking out for themselves. I think in America, people think of themselves as American first, and secondly, they identify with the area they're from, the region they're from, or the state they're from. But they are Americans first, and they fly the American flag, and they celebrate, national holidays like 4th of July and whatever, and they feel a strong sense of pride and unity of being Americans, where I don't get that impression that that is the way it is here in the United Kingdom. So let's make Britain great again, all right? Number three things that I think the UK could learn from the US is kind of adjust your sense of being entitled. Yeah, I mean, I think it's great that there's a really good work-life balance here, but I think it almost tips to more of the, living to live versus living to work or working to live. Some people just don't seem to want to work, and it seems to be accepted that you can kind of skive off, as they say, take lots of holidays or take days off. We had 3 long weekends alone in May. How that contributes to our productivity, I can't imagine. I mean, there's got to be some point where you say, okay, folks, we need to go back to work because we've just been through a pandemic. We've been through all this economic upheaval. Somebody needs to keep the lights on. So I think Americans are known for being hard workers, probably working too hard, not having enough vacation. So somewhere in the middle there, I think there's a good balance. But yeah, I think the UK could learn a little bit more about working harder from their American cousins. And I've talked about this before. Number 4 is customer service. Yes, I still think customer service is important. I appreciate it. If you can do something for somebody and it's within your power to, why wouldn't you? If somebody has a question and they walk into your shop or your store or your business, why wouldn't you stop and answer their question? Instead, I'm often met by two shop assistants busily talking to each other who act kind of annoyed if I, as a customer, need to have an answer or have a question. So I think it's the American way to sort of go out of their way to help a customer, and quite frankly, I like that. I don't think it's intrusive at all for somebody to say, hey, how are you? Or hi, let me know if you need some help. Not at all. If I don't need any help, I'll just say, I'm fine, thank you. But I think it's a good thing for people to want to have your business and to show it and be willing to go above and beyond. So that's definitely something I think the UK could learn from the US, better customer service. And now I'm going to flip over to driving. Well, if you watch any of my other videos, you know that I passed my British driving test and found it quite difficult. One of the things that used to confuse me was the speed limit because it's not signed consistently here. In the US, there's these octagonal signs that have a number on them, and everywhere you go, you'll see the same sign no matter what state you're in, no matter where you are, you will know exactly what the speed limit is. Whereas here, not only can the speed limit be invisible at times because the sign is just a little tiny round sign, or it's on the road, or it's somewhere else, or you're just supposed to know what it is. It's a round sign with a line through it. You're supposed to know that's the national speed limit and what it is. Yeah, that's great if you took the driving test here. But if you're a tourist or if you're visiting or you're from another country, hello. So why not just not only post the speed limits where they're very easy to see, but keep them reasonable. Don't go from 60 miles an hour, which I think is unsafe on a lot of these country roads, little narrow country roads, and then dip down into 20 miles an hour, 30 miles an hour without even a chance to slow down. I mean, maybe those are just speed traps, I don't know, but I think that's something that the UK could learn from the US. And while we're on traffic, pedestrians have right of way in the US. And I have to admit, I feel a little safer walking there, although granted, I don't do as much walking there when I'm in the US as I do in the UK. But heck, folks here do. You've got to be able to go pretty fast if you want to get out of the way of a car or even a cycle, because people here don't seem to slow down or don't seem to think that pedestrians should have right of way. Whereas in the US, many states have a law that pedestrians do have the right of way, and you will get fined if you don't observe that. And the western states, especially California, if you go anywhere near a curb, a car will stop for you. So there you go. I think that's something we could learn from our American cousins, giving pedestrians right of way. And now I'm going to go into a completely different topic, and you won't see this one coming. Low flow toilets. They work in the US, they don't work here. That's all I'm saying. And we can make so many great things, but for some reason somebody got it in their head that it had to be made a certain way, and they don't work. And while we're on the topic of appliances, let's talk about faucets, or as you call them, what do you call them here? Taps. So why does the water have to gush out at the end? Why can't you put one of those little doohickey things on the end of it so that the water is filtered and it doesn't splash out all over the place? And while we're on appliances, let's talk about clothes drying. It is the 21st century. There has to be a better way. In the US, we have these lovely things called tumble dryers that actually extract the moisture out of the clothes. We don't rely on having good weather, a clothesline, or a place to hang your sheets. So I think that is something that could be improved and that we could learn from our American friends across the pond. And now I'm going to jump over to TV news. I know, you didn't expect that, did you? Well, TV news here is, I just kind of shake my head. I have to admit, I don't even watch it anymore. I find it highly, uninformative, and I get kind of bored watching it. In the US, we typically have, you get a little bit of local news, you get a little bit of regional news, you get a little bit of national news, and then you get a smattering of international news. And so by the end of a half hour, you kind of know you've got the big picture of what's going on in the world. They kind of hit all the high points. Whereas here, they kind of go down some kind of alleyway where they start talking about one thing, and you're like, well, wait a minute, what about this other thing that I heard about? I want to know more about that. So I think the news here could be a lot more informative and less biased, to be honest with you. And I know a lot of Brits, or a lot of Americans actually, watch BBC News in America because they like the way that is presented. And I think there may be a different version of BBC News that they watch over there. And I agree, they do television really well here, but I would prefer the news to be something that I can grasp and get a big picture idea of what's going on in the world in a half an hour. And last but not least, this is probably going to go down a tree, but folks, let's be less pedantic. Let's not sweat the small stuff. I mean, during the pandemic, I couldn't get over how people would just go along with these crazy rules that they would make up and then, sort of pass them on to I can remember getting on a bus and somebody turning around and telling me, why didn't I move when I had been sitting where I was before they got on the bus? And I could go on and on. I had somebody chide me outside their car as they were driving by because they didn't think I put the shopping trolley away properly at Waitrose. So don't sweat the small stuff. And it's all small stuff. Don't be so quick to prove somebody wrong so that you can be right. I think in America, people would never dream of telling other people how to do things. They just don't. It's kind of, they may think it, but they certainly wouldn't have the nerve to come out and tell you, oh, you put that shopping trolley away wrong. So I think it's a great idea to not sweat the small stuff, to let these things go. And that is something I think, maybe Americans are a little more laid back. Yes, they can be ruder. Yes, they're not as polite. But maybe there's that hostility in England. You're also polite, but yet it comes out where you have to tell other people, what they should be doing. So there you go. Those are some things that I think the UK could learn from the Americans. We all have our little, hiccups. We all have our little things, don't we? But I think we can all learn from each other. And I think I'm very pro-British, and probably more pro-British than I am pro-American. I love a lot of things about the U.S., but I've chosen to live here. And I think it can be great again. I think it should be Great Britain. I think there's so much potential here. So this is just my way of saying, we can do better. All right, there you go. Any comments? Put them below. And I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Bye for now.